Good. Good afternoon. It's 1 p.m. and I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the California Board of Psychology Board meeting, and I'd like to ask Ms. Pruteau to please call the roll.
Kasuga? Oh, can you hear me? Okay, good. There's Kasuga.
Yes.
Fu?
Here.
Harb Sheets?
Here.
Nystrom?
Here.
Rogers?
Here.
Tate?
Here.
Roll is complete.
Thank you, and quorum is established. Thank you to everyone for joining us this afternoon. My name is Leah Tate, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the Wright Institute here in Berkeley, California. And a big thank you to the Wright Institute for hosting our meeting today, and tomorrow, for that matter. I would like to start the afternoon with the swearing in / reappointment of Ms. Julie Nystrom.
Constitution of the United States
And the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely,
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon the duties of which I'm about to enter.
Yes. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nystrom, and congratulations. So I have a few housekeeping items to share with you before we jump into the mindfulness exercise. You will notice that all of the board members have computers in front of them. All of our board materials are digital, and that is what we will be referencing today and tomorrow. Let's see. Restrooms out the door and down the hall to your left. And regarding continuing professional development credit, that will be available for attending the meeting today and or tomorrow. And I'm going to give Ms. Pruteau just a few moments to let us know how to properly document our CPD.
Thank you, Professor Tate. Good afternoon. So attending today's board meeting provides you with CPD credit under category number 1, attendance at a California Board of Psychology meeting. For your CPD records, please notate today's date as August 15th, 2024, and note that we are here for the board meeting. Directly before we go to closed session, I will announce how many hours or portion thereof you can be credited. And just for your information, we do have a courtesy form that's provided to aid in tracking CPD if you want to use it. This is posted along with many other resources on the main website and can be accessed from the quick hits on the right of the main splash page at the link entitled Continuing Professional Development. So there's a lot of different resources there, as well as the full text of regulations, but you can use that to track your hours should you like to. Back to you, President Tate.
Thank you. This is Ms. Pruteau's last board meeting with us. She's going to be moving on to the Department of Healthcare Services, and we wish her well. She has been amazing serving at the Board of Psychology, and we will miss her. So thank you. We are headed into Dr. Rogers' mindfulness exercise. Dr. Rogers.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Tate. Every time I get ready to lead a mindfulness exercise, I try to think about what would be most helpful during our time together. And I often reflect on something that my meditation teacher told me years ago. She said, "You teach from your own practice, and you can always tell a teacher who is not practicing." So I try to let my heart lead me in what I offer. And so where I have been sort of resting these days is the practice of somatic mindfulness. I think we spend a lot of time in our minds. We spend a lot of time exploring our emotions, but we don't always spend time tapping into the wisdom of the body. And so I've been trying to practice that as of late, and I thought I would share a practice that's been meaningful to me lately, and I invite you to join me if that feels comfortable and accessible for you. So I will start my timer. There is nothing for you to do other than engage in the practice and rest for a few minutes. So finding a position that is comfortable for you, if you choose to engage in the practice. And gently closing the eyes if that feels available to you. And if not, that's not a problem. Simply lower the gaze. And really bringing the mind, the heart, and the body into this moment. There were many things that we engaged in before getting to this moment, and lots of things that await us on the other side of this moment and this meeting. But for now, we rest. And we bring ourselves into the here and now. Finding a posture that feels upright but not uptight. Something that conveys a sense of both dignity and ease. As we explore our interior and make space for inquiry as it relates to the body. So in this moment, allow yourself to just check in with the body. How is the body in this moment? Maybe noticing the points of contact between your body and the chair. Maybe the back of the chair or your bottom on the chair. Noticing the feet placed on the floor. And really allowing yourself to touch into being supported by the earth beneath you. Perhaps noticing temperature. Are there certain parts of the body that are warm? Other parts that might be cool? Paying attention to the heartbeat. Or simply noticing the body breathing you. We are not the ones actually doing the breathing. Our bodies have been breathing us our entire lives. And if there are any thoughts that are present, we simply notice without getting caught in the story of the thoughts. Simply letting them pass through. And in this practice, we'll engage in something called somatic centering, which is the practice of mindfulness in 4 directions. The first direction is that of length. So allowing the bottom half of the body to soften and settle and connect with the earth. And then seeing if you can breathe in all the way up through the spine, lengthening the spine on the inhale. Imagining there's a string pulling at the crown of your head. So in this direction, we're both settling and straightening. And this is the dimension of length. And in the practice of somatics, length is often equated with dignity. Can you touch into your own sense of inherent dignity and worth in this moment? So much in the world asks us to deny our inherent dignity and worth. So can we allow our length to be a representative of this dignity that we all possess? The second dimension is width. So this is touching into the body from one side to the other. So left ear to right ear, left shoulder to right shoulder, left hip to the right hip, and so on and so forth, all the way down. And as we touch into this dimension of width from one side to the other, this is about our worth and our belonging and our connectedness to one another. In these increasingly divisive times, I think it's really important that we remember our connectedness, our inherent worthiness, and the inherent worthiness of all beings. Can we touch into our sense of worth and our sense of interconnectedness, interdependence, and belonging? Seeing if you can feel into the width, the worthiness of the person sitting next to you. Reminding ourselves that we all belong. And the third dimension is depth. Back to front, front to back. Starting with the back, feeling into the back body. Noticing the back of the head, the back of the neck, upper back, lower back, bottom, backs of the legs. Bringing the back body online. And this is where we tap into our strength, all of the experiences we've had in our lives leading up to this moment, both positive and negative, painful and joyful, all of those at our backs, teachers, friends, mentors, ancestors. Who has our back? Who is supporting us in this moment? Who is standing with us? Then moving to the inside, feeling the heartbeat, feeling our bodies sustaining us. This is how we meet now. And then feeling into the front body, the front of the face, front of the neck, the chest, fronts of the legs all the way down. And this is where we look to the future. What do we envision? What are we moving toward? And how do we want to show up? And that's the dimension of depth. And the last dimension is just about 2 inches below the belly button. We call it the pelvic bowl. This is internal. And this is our sense of purpose. Why are we here on this planet? What is our purpose? What are we here for? What truly matters? And how do we behave in a way that is in alignment with that purpose? And what does it feel like to move from center, to move from a place of purpose and intentionality? So as we center in length, width, depth, and purpose, check in with the body and check in with your mood. And allow that to be your anchor for this day. And when you're ready, you can gently open your eyes and bring your attention back into this space. Thank you, everyone, for your practice.
As always, thank you, Dr. Rogers, for getting us geared up for the business at hand. Any board comment on the President's welcome? Any public comment for the President's welcome? If so, please come forward and have a seat. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 3. I was trying to move forward. This is public comment for items not on the agenda. The board may not discuss or take action on any matter raised during this public comment section, except to decide whether to place the matter on the agenda of a future meeting. Before I invite speakers to come forward for public comment, I would ask individuals making comments to not discuss the specifics, including names, as to pending complaints, pending licensing applications, or pending disciplinary actions that may come before the board for a decision. Such discussions are considered ex parte communications, as they could provide information to the members that is outside of the record in violation of the Administrative Procedures Act. While there may be a desire to engage in further discussion with comments presented at this time, the board may not discuss or take action. Although this may give the impression we're not being responsive, these procedures are critical to ensure the compliance with the Open Meetings Act and to avoid compromising the speaker's goals or the board's mission. And in addition, if there is a speaker before you who expresses thoughts that are very similar to yours, please feel free to come forward and verbally agree with the previous speaker. I'd like to ask, is there anyone who would like to make public comment? I'm just trying to get a sense of how many people are interested. Oh, okay. Thank you. Oh, yes. Please come forward. Yes, thank you. And have a seat, and then press the middle button until it turns green and pull it toward you so we can hear exactly what you have to say.
Hi, Dr. Andrea Davis. I'm a member of the California Psych Association. And
Can you pull it a little forward?
surely.
Yes.
Good afternoon. It's lovely to see you all, and thank you for having this meeting here. I just wanted to share a little bit of feedback from members of the Los Angeles County Psychological Association about some delays in licensing processing for new licensees, for people coming from out of state, and for psychological associates applying for the first time. And some difficulties hearing back about that or understanding exactly how that's going to be resolved. Sort of a new problem popping up recently that's worsened. So I just wanted to share that. I know that a lot of people would like to be here, can't be here, but I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And that was out of state and individuals applying for the first time. Did I get that? Okay. Thank you so much. Any other public comment at this time? Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 4 is discussion and possible approval of the board meeting minutes from the May 10th, 2024 meeting. Any board comment on this item? Thank you. Any public comment? Okay, back to the board.
I move we accept the
Right,
draft.
you got to push the mic. No one can hear
Did I
you.
not get it?
Yeah, pull it.
I move that we, is it not working?
Oh, pull
It's
it
green.
toward- yeah, pull it towards you more.
Okay. I move
Yeah.
that we accept the meeting minutes from the Board of Psychology meeting on May 10th,
I second.
2024.
Thank you. Any board comment? We have a motion and a second. Going back to public comment. Any public comment on this item? Thank you. Ms. Berteau, can you please call the roll?
Kasuga.
Aye.
Fu.
Aye.
Harb Sheets.
Aye.
Nystrom.
Aye.
Rogers.
Aye.
Tate.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion passes. Agenda item number 5 is the president's report. All of the upcoming board meetings and committee meetings are listed on the board, in the board packet, and also on the board website. Our next board meeting is November 7th and 8th. This is an in-person meeting, and this will be held in San Diego, California. We will also be holding a special meeting in September 2024 to announce the interim executive officer moving forward, and we'll let Ms. Sorick discuss that in agenda item number 6. But any board comment on the president's report? Thank you. Any public comment on the president's report? Please come forward and have a seat. Thank you. Agenda item number 6 is the executive officer's report. Ms. Sorick, please.
Good afternoon, members. Included in the meeting materials is the executive officer's report, including the personnel update, a couple of additions to this. Carmen Harp from the Central Services Unit will be retiring and will be leaving the unit, and we will be working on a backfill for that position in renewals. We also have Ms. Perteau, who is leaving the CPD unit. We will also be looking to backfill that position. And I will be also leaving the board. I swear that's the end of it for departures. I will be taking a position as Director of Government Affairs for Magellan for California. So I will be able to stay in the behavioral health sphere, which I'm really excited about. I've been with Department of Consumer Affairs for 20 years now. And with this particular board for 11 years. And it's been a really amazing ride. Very grateful for my time working with stakeholders and certainly staff and these wonderful board members sitting here with me today. So thank you for all of your time working with me and your graciousness. And I look forward to seeing you all in the future at some point. Also included in the meeting materials is the annual report to the legislature. This is a data set that all Department of Consumer Affairs programs provide to the legislature each year. And I'm happy to answer any questions the board or the public may have on the executive officer's report.
Any board comment? And it can't be about making her stay, but any other board comment? Dr. Kasuga.
I just wanted to express my gratitude to Ms. Sorek for her leadership for the past 11 years, 7 years of which I was part of the board. I just wanted to put it out there. There's a lot of things that are moving smoothly that is probably not visible on the outside, but was made possible to run smoothly and efficiently because of Ms. Sorek. And I just wanted to wish you all the best for your next adventure. And you will be definitely missed by me and I'm sure everybody in the BOP.
Thanks, Dr. Kasuga. Anyone else? Any public comment on this agenda item? This is agenda item number 6, the Executive Officer's Report. If you do have a comment, please come forward and have a seat. Okay, thank you. And Ms. Sorek, you're leaving us with huge shoes to fill, but we'll get it done. I don't know how, but it'll happen. Agenda item number 7 is the DCA update. Ms. Durantes from the Board and Bureau Relations.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, pull it a little closer. So I don't know why it's, pull the whole unit. Yep.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. That's
Great.
it. That's it.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much for having me. I am so sad that Antoinette's leaving. There are certain boards that are within my portfolio, and this is one of them. So since I started, psychology has been under me. So you will be very missed, Antoinette. So thank you for everything that you've done. And Sarah, too, thank you so much for all your work. You'll be very missed. Sad. All right. Well, I'm going to jump into the updates. If there are any questions or anything that needs to be repeated at any point, I'm happy to. Any additional information, I'm happy to provide as well. And some of this information was also included in the bi-monthly newsletter that we sent out at the end of July to board presidents and vice presidents.
Pull it just a little closer because I think, yes, like you're going to eat it. Yes.
All right. Well, thank you. All right. So I'm going to jump right into it. So starting off with our budget letter 2420 in regard to vacancy savings and position elimination, the Department of Finance has issued budget letter 2420 implementing the governor's proposal to reduce the state workforce by 10,000 positions and $1.5 billion. DCA's budget office is working closely with each board and bureau to identify appropriate reductions while maintaining the mandate for consumer protection. The final budget reduction plan will need to be approved by agency and ultimately by the Department of Finance. The budget reduction will be effective starting 2024 to 2025 and ongoing, while the position elimination will be effective beginning 2025 to 2026 and ongoing. The reductions will impact DCA boards and bureaus, and DCA will continue to share further information as it becomes available. We are also awaiting additional guidance from the Department of Finance, so as soon as that becomes available as well, we will be sharing that with you all. And so I hope to have additional updates for you when you meet in November. Moving on to the Governor's Appointments Office. So, Deputy Appointments Secretary Mary Valdez Singh was recently appointed Deputy Commissioner of Legislation and at the Department of Financial Protection and Innovation. She worked closely with Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency, DCA, boards and bureaus, and was also worked very closely with board and advisory committee appointments. And so her last day with appointments was in July. And going forward, Deputy Appointments Secretary Curtis Sling will oversee the Healing Arts boards, and Assistant Deputy Appointments Secretary Aubrey Anthony will oversee the non-healing arts. Boards and bureaus should still continue to work with board and bureau relations on their appointment needs. And we wish Mary well on her new role, as well as looking forward to working with Curtis and Aubrey. Moving on to an update on workplace violence prevention policy and new training requirement. So this morning, I may have bombarded a lot of you on this portion, so you may have already seen my email on this. And so SB 553 is a new law that became effective in January, and SB 553 amended the California Labor Code to require California employers to develop and implement a workplace violence prevention plan and train all employees. As a result of this new law, DCA updated its current workplace violence prevention policy to include all requirements of SB 553. And DCA also developed an annual workplace violence prevention training that is located on DCA's learning management system. This training is mandatory for all DCA employees, including board members. And it must be completed by August 30th. And so it is only about 30 minutes. And so we do ask that you please complete it at your earliest convenience. If you do have any issues with logging into LMS, please feel free to reach out. I can reset the password or provide you with your user ID or whatnot. So please let me know if you do have any questions on that. Moving on to board member orientation training. For any of you that may have been appointed or recently reappointed, our next board member orientation training is on October 22nd, and it will be held virtually. And so you are also able to register via LMS for that. And if there are any questions, also happy to help. Moving on to licensing resources, webinar for military service members and their families. On July 31st, DCA participated in a virtual military licensing webinar hosted by Navy Region Southwest. The webinar showcased DCA military licensing resources to active duty military veterans and military spouses throughout California and Nevada bases. DCA's Deputy Director of Communications provided an overview of licensing resources, and DCA's Deputy Director of Information Services provided a demonstration of the Federal Professional License Portability and State Registration Online Portal. DCA received positive feedback and looks forward to continuing its partnerships with the military community. Moving on to the DEI update. The Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Steering Committee just recently met on July 26th. The meeting included discussion on DEI training, development of a workforce development survey from a DEI perspective, expanding language access, and DEI activities for inclusion in the DCA annual report. This is the second year the DEI committee is memorializing the department's DEI activities in the annual report, which is provided to the administration, as Antoinette just mentioned, and the legislature. This year's report will include DCA-specific updates on training, outreach, language access, and tools and resources created for staff, and it will also highlight board and bureau accomplishments. And so I am pleased to share a couple updates on DEI efforts throughout DCA. And so to further expand public input and access, the Acupuncture Board released its strategic planning survey in 4 languages: English, Spanish, Chinese, and Korean. and 75% of the surveys were completed in a language other than English. The California State Athletic Commission extended an existing agreement and executed 2 new agreements with tribal nations to regulate combat sports on tribal land and ensure participant safety. The Medical Board of California administers the Mexico Pilot Program, which allows up to 30 physicians licensed in Mexico who specialize in family practice, internal medicine, pediatrics, and gynecology to practice in California for up to 3 years. In 2003, 9 additional physicians were licensed under the Mexico Pilot Program, reaching the 30 physician threshold. And lastly, the Contractor State License Board translated 10 examinations commonly taken by candidates into Spanish, including the law and business examination that is required of all applicants. For all other trade examinations and languages, accommodations are also made for the applicant to be joined by an approved translator during the examination. The annual report will be available early next year and will be shared with your executive officer. And the next DEI committee meeting is on October 25th. And so if you do have any ideas or questions for the committee to consider, please feel free to reach out to either Antoinette or myself. And so our Deputy Director of Equity and Compliance will also be retiring this Friday. And she is our current DEI coordinator for DCA. So that'll actually be handed over to me. So I'll be the DEI coordinator, and I'm happy to answer any questions in regard to that. And lastly, I just want to offer a phishing alert reminder. We have had many instances and reports in regard to phishing. So we are just urging you to please be vigilant and cautious when reading emails, especially when they seem to pertain to the board. Just take an extra look. Please make sure to verify the sender email, and especially if they are requesting any money or personal confidential information. So just wanted to offer that reminder since we have had a really high level of that seen in our Office of Information Security. So with that, that's all I have for you. So thank you for having me, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Antes. Any board comment, questions? Thank you. Any public comment for Mr. Antes? Please come forward and stand next to her if you have comment. Thank you, Mr. Antes. Thank you. Moving on to the budget update with Mr. Polk.
Good afternoon. Okay, is that better? Okay. Good afternoon. Included in the meeting materials is the various reports provided by the Budget Office. The reports reflect that as of fiscal month 11, the board projects collecting $7.53 million in revenue during the current fiscal year of 23-24. As for expenditures for 23-24, also based on the same fiscal month, the board is projected to spend approximately $8.3 million of its budgeted appropriation of $8.4 million, leaving a balance of approximately $207,000. Also included in the meeting materials includes information that the Department of Consumer Affairs was notified that in the May revision that the Department of Justice has requested an increase to the hourly legal service rates by approximately 3.75%. The Budget Office completed an initial estimate to the Department of Consumer Affairs overall attorney general costs resulting from the proposal rate increase, which comes out to be approximately $1.8 to $2 million. At this time, board staff is continuing to work and monitor the revenue and expenditures with the Budget Office on a monthly basis, and I'm open for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Polk. Any board comment?
I have a question.
Oh, Dr. Harpsheets?
Yeah, in your memo to the board.
Okay, wait. Wait, hold on.
Okay,
Like you're gonna eat
I gotta
it.
get it closer.
Like the
Okay,
best snack
eat
you've
it,
ever
eat it.
had.
Right, I know. Okay, let me see if I can do this and read this. Mr. Polk, in your memo to the board, in the background section, first paragraph, and it was saying that the board was projected to spend approximately 8.331 million of the appropriation of 8.22, but then in your report you said it was 8.4. So
Yeah, I apologize.
Oh,
Upon review of the budget reports, the figures in the memo actually are off by a little bit. So in my report, it provides the correct amounts.
okay, so we're not spending more
No,
than we
no.
were appropriated. Okay, that's what I needed to
Yeah,
know.
sorry
Thank
about
you.
that. Yeah, it was just an
Okay.
error that was found after.
Thank you. Okay.
And I know I'm going to turn my head this way, and Mr. Fu is going to be right here. Yes. Go.
Thank you. Mr. Polk, do we have an estimate of that 1.8 to $2 million with regard to the increase of AG costs, what the impact of the board will be directly? So in other words, of the 2 million, what is our portion as a board of that 2 million?
This is Antoinette. I think what we do know is that the projected hourly rates are going up 3.75%. And I know Mr. Yates is with us here today, and he may not know the budget side of things, but I don't know when that became effective, if that was effective immediately or not. But our use of DOJ services fluctuates by month depending on, and I'm looking at Ms. Monterrubio just in case, but our rates fluctuate depending on the hours that are dedicated to case review or hearing time. So it fluctuates by the month, but we do know that the increase is by the 3.75%, and I'm not sure about the effective date. Mr. Polk, do you know the effective date of that? I know it was in the May revised, but
I don't know the exact effective date. Just in the materials that we did receive, it said that at this time it was a proposal and was requested.
Sorry.
Date is July 1st, 2024. That was the effective date.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Mr. Yates, you might want to stay there.
On this.
Just for clarification, Mr. Polk, when we say where does this show up in our expenditure projection report? Is it under departmental services, code 5342, or is that if we want was to determine what the base is and then apply 1.35 to that base, what is that line item code in our expenditure report to do that? And we can come back to this when you have a chance to take a look at it too.
I believe it is reflected in the departmental services, 5342. I think it would be reflected in that line item.
And the entire budgeted item, line item of 54,000, is that wholly for Department of Justice services, or is that inclusive of other items related to departmental services?
I believe it might be CMP, actually. I'm really got a small font on my computer, but I believe it's CMP services, internal or external, which would be more in the 1 million plus range, which is typically the kind of budget we look at for each fiscal year. So.
Understood. So just from my understanding, we're baselining about $1 million-ish and add 3.5% to that going forward. Okay, that's really helpful for understanding. Mr. Yates, I have a question for you with regard to it because you're costing us $2 million as a department. Thank you for your service. Appreciate it. And one of the questions I have is I noticed in the Board of Psychology's annual report to the legislature that we have about 40 cases open with the Attorney General's office, 117 cases pending, and 24 cases closed. So just doing some math here, our closure rate relative to the rate increase doesn't seem to line up in terms of the services we're receiving. Could you help me understand what is the process by which we close cases or investigate cases? It's taking 1,139 days to impose discipline when cases are referred to the Attorney General's office. So what's the board receiving in return for the increase in rates?
I'm probably not authorized to answer that question. That's something that would have to go through Gloria Castro, our SAG.
Wonderful. It would be helpful, Ms. Sorick, in your last to-do items list, which I'm sure is growing at the moment, for us to just better understand the services paid versus outcomes, especially if the outcomes are that it's taking 3+ years to impose discipline, but the rates that we're paying continue to increase without a change in those outcomes. So I would be helpful to understand as a board member, how do we reconcile the two? And that is not at all a criticism whatsoever of the AG's office. We're really grateful for the partnership. I think it's just for us to, as a board, we've raised our fees in the past to cover operating expenses, and it's I think our responsibility to explain what those expenses do cover and what the outcomes are. And I am very grateful for the Attorney General's office for the continued partnership for enforcement. That partnership is essential. So thank you, Mr. Yates.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Fu, as always, insightful. I love the questions. Any other board comment on the budget report?
Oh, really quick, I was just getting a message from our budget analyst who must be watching live. And it is CMP internal is the correct line item in the budget. So, and then she's actively texting, so I'm
1.3.
awaiting the moving dots.
Well, just thank you to our colleagues back in Sacramento. I really appreciate it. I know budget questions asked on the spot are the most difficult, and I just appreciate the grace and humor that both Mr. Polk, Mr. Yates, and the team in Sacramento are indulging me in this moment.
I just wanted to report that based on historical Attorney General costs, the increase in the rate may impact the board by an additional $41,000 is the estimate.
Any other board comment regarding the budget report? Any public comment regarding the budget report? Please have a seat next to Mr. Polk, please. Okay, seeing no movement. Thank you, Mr. Polk. I appreciate it. We're moving on to the enforcement report. Ms. Monterrubio, please.
Good afternoon. Enforcement report agenda item 9 talks about the fact that we have 2 vacant enforcement analyst positions. There is some good news since this report was written on July 31st. We have made a conditional offer to one of the applicants, and they have accepted, hoping that they will be starting in the next 30 to 45 days. And we just concluded interviews for the second position this week and made an offer, and so we are hoping that will be accepted as well. And again, hopefully that person will also begin employment in 30 to 45 days. Currently, there are 33 subject matter experts. We received 36 new applications. When a new application is received, the applicant is sent an acknowledgement letter or a letter letting them know their application is incomplete. Once we have a completed application, it is sent to a former board member for final review and approval of eligibility. And our next expert training will be held in September of this year. Expert reviewers are paid $150 to $220 per hour, depending upon the services rendered, for case reviews, preparation of expert opinion reports, and testimony at administrative hearings. There is only one expert assigned to each case. They are expected to perform an initial and final review and testify if needed. I'd like to add that usually testifying at hearings is maybe 1 or 2 times per year. The mission of the board is to protect consumers of psychological services by licensing psychologists, regulating the practice of psychology, and supporting the evolution of the profession. Expert reviewers are not advocates for the board, but rather advocates for the consumers of California. Since July 1st of 2024, the board has received 89 complaints. All complaints received are opened and assigned to an analyst. Since July 1st, the board has issued 3 enforcement citations. Citations are issued for minor violations such as record keeping. Since July 1st, we have sent 2 cases over to the Office of the Attorney General for formal discipline. And we are currently monitoring 32 active probationers and 15 told probationers. Of the 32 active probationers, 2 are out of compliance, and being out of compliance can result in a citation and fine or further disciplinary action through the Office of the Attorney General. There's no action requested at this time. This item is for informational purposes only. Are there any questions or comments?
Any comments from Ms. Monterrubio? And thank you for your presentation. Ms. Nystrom.
Ms. Monterrubio, just a question on the expert reviewers. We currently have 33 and you have 36 new applicants. How many in total does the board hope to have?
We're hoping that the 2 former board members that are currently reviewing these applications approve all 36. But if they don't, if we could even add an additional 20, that would be great. That would be the most we've had in the last several years. So any amount would be a great contribution to the program, but I'm hoping for at least 20 being approved of those 36.
Okay, great. And are you always accepting applications for expert reviewers?
That is ongoing. We hold our expert training every 2 years, but when we notify the applicants that we will be reviewing their application, and if they're eligible, they would have to attend the mandatory training. Okay. So we may have to hold applications for quite some time, but we're constantly providing articles in the journal. We do email blasts. We send out contact letters to anyone who's been licensed over 3 years and in good standing. We're hoping down the road we can work with some of the associations to help draw interest in the program. Absolutely. So yes, in answer to your question, we'll always accept them, but we may have to hold off because of the training.
Okay, I appreciate that information. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Kasuga.
My questions are related to the expert training, and so it's coming up in September 2024, and I just want to make sure that we get as many people to attend the training since it's not happening as frequently. What is required for the expert to sign up for that training? So like in terms of the application process and the registration.
I'm sorry, Dr. Kasuga. I don't know what you mean by the registration, but as for the application, that is available online. They can fill out the application. The first page of the application does go over a list of things that they need to have. A few examples, and again, the expert application is in the enforcement committee report, but off the top of my head, they have to be discipline-free. I'm sorry, do I need to scoot back? Yeah. I'm sorry. Is this better?
Now he downloaded from that. So go ahead and increase it from that. Go ahead.
Okay. This is okay? Okay. So they have to be discipline-free. They have to have a license for 3 years. They again have to. There's a list of requirements, and so once they review the application, they fill out the form, they can send it to us. Again, that can be via email, that can be regular mail. We're going to review that application and make sure that it's complete. If it's complete, we're going to send them an acknowledgement letter notifying that it's been accepted. If it's incomplete, we're going to let them know that it's incomplete and why it's incomplete. Once it's completed, it's sent to a former board member to review for eligibility. They will then let us know whether this individual does meet the requirements. If they do, we then would invite them to the next training. So everyone who has applied up until I believe it was July 15th is being reviewed by a former board member, and everyone has also been sent save the date for our September 24 training. Does that answer your question? I wasn't sure what you meant about the registration.
I was just like wondering, that's really helpful because I'm just wondering for people that are interested and because the training is coming up, what is needed in order to make the training. But it seems like that is probably too soon to be able to apply and make it to the next training in September.
And unfortunately, that's probably true. In September of 2018, at our stakeholders meeting, we agreed that we would have former board members review applications, and we have done that. However, we still need to be able to give those former board members enough time to review an application. And some applications can be very lengthy. You're receiving not only the application, but the CV and any supporting documentation, writing samples. So again, we did a cutoff date to allow those board members enough time, former board members, enough time to review those applications. But we are still accepting applications, of course, and we are notifying individuals that we won't have another training until 2026 at this time.
And do we know how many people have agreed to attend the September 2024 meeting, training, I mean?
So we did send the save the date to all of our current experts as well as the 36 new ones, and they know that they may not qualify for the program. All but 2 will be attending.
That's great news.
Yes.
And just to give just for me to understand what the training entails, is that like a whole day event and or several day?
It's a one-day training. It's about 6 hours. Staff participates in that training, as well as the Office of the Attorney General, as well as the Division of Investigation. In fact, the Office of the Attorney General goes over certain scenarios of what one would do if they received a case with so many allegations. We also have the Division of Investigation there to talk about what to expect during a subject interview if an expert is called upon. We've done the same training for several years now. We've done surveys after the training and have received very positive feedback. We've also started a mid-year check-in just to kind of talk to our experts about what is working, what's not working. The Attorney General's office attended that training as well, because I think a lot of the questions are related to more of the discipline process. So Ryan did attend that training. It was very helpful, and we'll continue to do that mid-year check-in.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And one last question with regards the rate for expert reviewers. It says here that they are paid about $150 to $200 per hour. Is there a specific? Would you be able to give me an average of how many hours a case usually entails, or it varies widely?
Well, it does vary. However, when we send the expert the case to review, we give them 10 hours. If they need additional time, they do need to submit a request for that in writing. We're obviously very conscious of our budget. But usually they fall within the 10 hours. Now, there's obviously some cases that have boxes and boxes of documentation, and we're mindful of that. So it's 10 hours is what they're approved for, and we would like the review to be completed within 30 days. However, if due to work commitments or other things an expert might have going on, we may have to extend that. And again, depends on how lengthy the case is and how complex.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And just for anyone online on the agenda, the expert reviewer program has every line item, as Ms. Monterrubio said, everything that you need to have to actually apply for the program. And this is on page 62 of the combined packet. And it's covered in our next agenda item, but I just wanted to make sure everyone knows it is there.
And sorry, Dr. Tate, if you go to our website and type in expert reviewer application in the search bar, it will come up. It's also on our publications page as well.
Thank you. Any other board comment? Dr. Rogers.
Hi, Ms. Monterrubio. Thank you so much. Just a quick question for you. I'm so glad to see that we have an increased number of new applicants. And I know that you've been working really hard on your outreach efforts. Just curious if you have a sense of which outreach efforts might be yielding more applicants. Do you have any sense of that?
Well, I do know that our former CE coordinator, Lizelle McCochran, when she would hold the CBD webinars, she was kind enough to mention that we were in need of experts. That may have helped. CPA, I believe, also posted an article that we had written to their members as well. I'm not quite sure what may have helped us, but we definitely have seen an increase. Something we're going to try to do when we can do more outreach is have some of our current experts actually go out and talk about the program and their experiences. And when we did our mid-year check-in, we brought this up, and they were more than happy to assist the board. In regards to the mid-year check-in, one item that we've always kind of kicked around was that experts may feel as though they have to testify often at administrative hearings, and that's not true. It's, again, usually 1 to 2 times a year. So in speaking to our current experts, they have offered to help new experts with what to expect when you are contacted by the AG's office. Some of them have years and years of experience and said that they would do it for free, which is wonderful, but they would actually meet with some of our new hires individually or in a group setting and talk about what to expect, try to help them transition into this, new role. So that's something we're looking forward to. We're also definitely looking forward to them going to maybe certain conventions and talking about how wonderful it is to be an expert for the Board of Psychology.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Any other board comment? I'd like to open up this item for public comment. If you have a comment for Ms. Monterrubio regarding the enforcement report, please come forward and have a seat. I just have to get right on it.
Hello, Dr. Elizabeth Winkleman with the California Psychological Association. Thank you, Ms. Monterrubio, for the report and the board for the opportunity to comment. I just had a question about the role of the subject matter expert. In your comments, Ms. Monterrubio, you said that the subject matter experts are advocates for consumers. So I know that the Board of Psychology is designed to protect consumers, but for example, I was under the impression that the subject matter experts were to be objective. In other words, not as an advocate. So for example, in a lawsuit, an expert witness is there to talk about what is the standard of care, but they're required to be objective. So they're hired by one side, and one side, that side may decide not to use them, but they're required to be objective. And my understanding of the role of subject matter expert is they're giving their expertise as to the standard of care as opposed to advocating for one side. So I was wondering if you could provide some clarification about that.
Sure, that's a great question, Dr. Winkleman. As you know, we are a consumer protection agency, and I think part of the perception is that, to the consumers, is that a licensee is going to take a look at what another licensee has done and probably side with them. And that could not be further from the truth. What we do when we send a case out to an expert, the first thing we ask is whether or not there's a conflict of interest. Do you know this person? Because obviously we don't want somebody who has a prior or current relationship with the individual under investigation to be deciding whether or not there's been a departure from the standard of care. So I think that when I said they are advocates for consumers, consumers don't truly know whether or not there's been a departure from the standard of care. A qualified licensee and working in the same area of expertise would know. We are fair in our process. We look at every piece of documentation that is submitted to the board, and we ask an expert to opine as to whether or not there is a departure. We explain to our experts in our training that just because we send you a case does not mean that we believe there is a departure. We are lay people at the Board of Psychology, so we rely heavily on our experts to determine whether or not there was a violation of the laws. So yes, they are advocates for the consumer because the consumers truly don't know whether or not there was a departure from the standard of care. And we need our experts to help us determine whether or not that is true. We're fair in the process. Again, we're collectors of evidence. We ask for the medical records. We ask for a response to the allegations. And then again, everything is submitted to an expert to opine as to whether or not, again, there's a departure.
So the instructions for the expert are to advocate on the consumer's behalf or to objectively review for the standard of care. I mean, my understanding of the process had been that the subject matter experts are asked to, of course, give their expert opinion as to whether or not there's been a departure from the standard of care, but to do that in an objective way, not biased for or against the psychologist, but to apply the standard of what is objectively the standard of care, whereas you seem to be saying, maybe I don't understand. I understand that the subject matter experts are instructed to advocate on the behalf of the consumer or to give an objective opinion as to whether the standard of care has been violated.
Dr. Winkleman, I don't think she's disagreeing with what you're saying. It's just the use of the word advocate is that our mission is the protection of consumers, and the consumer may not know if there was in fact a deviation from the standard of care that occurred. So I think it's just a matter of providing us the information to make that informed decision and then give that feedback to the consumer. So it's not advocating in the traditional sense, but I think we're all saying the same thing. There's a fair and impartial review that happens. At the staff level, there's a layperson's review of the facts of the case and any potential violations of the Practice Act, but it is up to the expert to opine and let us know if there was in fact a deviation or not. And as we've talked about historically, the board disciplines 4% roughly of our licensees, but our mandate is always first and foremost consumer protection. So I don't know if that helps kind of clarify, but I think we're all saying the same thing. It's just the use of the word advocate.
Could I ask a question? So when we have the expert training, what are the subject matter experts instructed?
They're instructed to review the case material provided to them and opine as to whether or not there's a departure from the standard of care.
Okay, so the word advocate isn't used?
No, it is not. They're impartial.
Okay, because I think that's an important clarification, right? That they're not told to advocate for anything, but they're told to be impartial.
Correct.
Right?
And as I mentioned, we let them know at the training that just because you're sent a case does not mean that we believe there is a departure from the standard of care. We're relying on their expertise.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Winkleman. Any other public comment on this item? Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Monterrubio. Moving on to agenda item number 10. This is the Enforcement Committee report in consideration of committee recommendations. Dr. Phillips is not here today, but
I will be.
my esteemed colleague, Mr. Fu, is stepping in.
Thank you so much, Madam President. I lack the charm of Dr. Phillips, but hopefully I'll make it up in brevity. So the first item we'll look at is item 10A, the expert application. This is in page 61 of 686 in our combined packets. Almost a year ago, at our November 2023 board meeting, the committee had recommended to the board that we reduce the 80 hours of active practice to 40 hours. However, during this discussion, the board agreed and tasked the committee to review the expert application and provide a complete list of functions that constitute the full 80 hours of active practice. The board recommended that the participation on a board or committee of a professional organization, expertise in intellectual disabilities, including autism or a similar diagnosis, be added as 2 of the functions. We have attached the list of, the committee did go ahead and do a full review and added some potential options. And so you can refer to it on the last page of this item, which is page 71 of 686 in the combined packet of the, which follows the expert reviewer application. So a couple things, I'll be channeling Dr. Phillips' comments as well, because he had some additional insights and edits. But before I do that, are we clear on purpose with regard to this item? All right. So if you turn your attention to page 71 of 686, our current list is listed above, where we have 4 items. And we're recommending we strike out where things are struck out. And we're recommending a list of these additions. A few things that we would like to just make note of. So for example, it says right now, assessment of or intervention with intellectual disabilities. Dr. Phillips is recommending that we add developmental and intellectual disabilities to the sentence. And then the second addition, before I turn this over to the larger board for discussion, is that under psychological evaluations, including clinical observation, et cetera, Dr. Phillips is recommending psychological and neuropsychological evaluations, including clinical observation, reviewing records and documents, and psychometric testing. So the addition of reviewing records and documents, the addition of records and documents after the word reviewing. And the last comment that the committee had was that there was a survey that you received in your packets as a hand carry. So one of the things that we did was also have a survey of interested parties, stakeholders, and that included some recommendations and suggestions in our hand carry. You can see what those are. Just to address some of them, several people did mention therapy, group therapy, et cetera. But the committee considers these items as falling under direct client contact or direct client services. So those were why we didn't specify therapy, group therapy, et cetera. And some of the insights that we gained from the survey that stood out to us that we would invite everyone's discussion would be the idea of diversity, equity, inclusion, and social justice consulting, which would include relevant teaching experience at the doctoral level for teaching and also continuing professional development. And the addition of potentially clinical consulting as well as a part of this list. So with that, I'll wrap up my verbal report of 10A and turn it back to you, Madam President, for the discussion.
Let's open this up. Any board comment?
I agree with the suggested addition of developmental disabilities, but I would suggest that it would be changed to assessment of or intervention of developmental disabilities, including intellectual disabilities and autism, because both of those are developmental disabilities or a similar diagnosis.
Just so Mr. Polk can properly describe, if we can capture Dr. Kasuga's edit, and then also if Mr. Fu can provide the edits that were addressed a couple minutes ago.
Oh, yes. Sorry, Mr. Polk. So if you go to item, oh gosh, 1, 2,
It's bullet number 6
Bu-
is
thank
the
you,
first one,
Ms.
and then bullet number 9. will be the
Perfect.
second.
So bullet number 6, starting with the word assessment. Before Dr. Kasuga's additions, which we'll include right after this, we would add the words developmental and in following intervention with. So assessment of or intervention with developmental and intellectual disabilities, including autism or similar diagnosis. So we're going to take a pause there real quick. And then, Dr. Kasuga, would you please repeat your comments again for Mr. Polk so that we all can follow along? Given your expertise in this area, I think you made some insightful distinctions that the board might want to see visually.
So I would just make it into developmental disabilities and add intellectual after including intellectual disabilities and autism. Intellectual disability and autism.
Great.
And instead of or a similar diagnosis, I would write and other related diagnosis. So I would, that's too much and. So it's including intellectual disability, comma, autism, comma, and other related diagnoses. Just because intellectual disability and autism are under the umbrella of developmental disabilities, and the other related diagnoses would be maybe unspecified neurodevelopmental disorder or other DSM-5 diagnoses that fall under developmental disability. So that's kind of like the bigger umbrella. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kasuga. Do board members have any reflections with Dr. Kasuga and Dr. Phillips changes on that particular?
I'm good with that.
All right, seeing and hearing none, moving to the 9th bullet point. Thank you, Ms. Monterrubio. So, Mr. Polk, we're adding the phrase "and neuropsychological" after the first word psychological. And then after the phrase including clinical observation, comma, reviewing, after reviewing, you're adding the phrase records and documents, comma, and. Thank you, Mr. Polk. Do board members have any comments, reflections on the second recommended change to the proposed list?
Looks good.
All right, seeing and hearing none. And finally, with regard to the list, are there additional items you want to be on the list after your review of the survey items from folks? Are there particular items that you feel like are not captured in this proposed list?
I have to say, compared to the first list, this is very expansive, so I appreciate the work. Any other board members would like to add to this list, or does it feel comprehensive?
I have a question, and I don't know, maybe I'm missing it, or I don't know if it was omitted during the conversation, but substance abuse treatment.
Like as direct client services, or?
Is it included under?
Well, the only thing they left from the first four is direct client services.
Got it, okay.
So that's individual.
So it will fall under that. Thank you.
I think. What do you guys think? Yeah.
Where we expanded the most categories, as you can see, were just in the areas of consulting and
Got it.
and adding things like authorship of professional articles, journals, or books. But the direct client service is a fairly large umbrella for a lot of different things. And that was our reflection when we reviewed the survey results, was that many of the suggestions would follow under direct client services. The only item that Dr. Phillips raised was, that did come up in the survey results, would be if there would be interest at the board level to include a consulting reference to diversity, equity, inclusion, and social justice relative to experience, relative to teaching experience at the doctoral level or community professional development level. That was not discussed at committee, and I'm just sharing that with the board here, should the board wish to make that addition to this list.
I would be interested in seeing that added. Thank you.
So I think the additional bullet point, Mr. Polk, for purposes, might read the following, and I would welcome fellow wordsmithers to make sure this is consistent with our desire, which is to say diversity, comma, equity, comma, inclusion, comma, and social justice consulting.
So diversity.
Oh, sorry. Diversity, equity, inclusion, and social justice consulting.
Are we adding teaching to that as well, or just consulting?
We do have teaching of continuing education courses in psychology associated with that on the list, second to bottom. So I think this is just adding a different layer. Sorry, Mr. Polk, I can't see from where I am, but I'm assuming the...
It's not quite there yet. Diversity, equity, inclusion?
Yeah.
Social justice. Okay.
And it is a known fact that typing while 50 eyes are looking at you is the worst possible job in the world. So, Mr. Polk, just a thank you for consulting. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Polk.
All right. So, if folks are good with this list at the board level, may I recommend that we have a motion to approve the list as presented to be added to the expert application?
So move.
I second.
It's been moved by Dr. Tate, seconded by Dr. Rogers. Is there public comment on this item?
There is a typo, I'll just point it out. It's reviewing no comma records and documents. That's two separate items. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
That assessment bullet isn't quite done the way Dr. Masuga asked. At the end of it was supposed to be, I think, other diagnoses or something. Other related.
I can't see.
Yeah.
Dr. Kasuga, do you want to stand up and check it? I can't see it either, so. Thank you to the wordsmithers out there. Oh.
Thank you for that. Really appreciate it.
Plural on diagnoses.
This is how we get people involved.
Yes.
This is how we do it. Yeah.
If our motion makers and second, would you be okay? We added the list along and delegate to executive. And delegate to the executive officer to make any non-substantive technical changes to this list.
I'm happy to amend my motion to include that.
Great. So we can capture once we lose our our engaged audience, we will have our executive officer and the team make sure that there isn't any, there aren't any other issues left behind. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Tate, for a roll call vote.
Okay. Public comment first, though. Oh, we did? Okay, great. Ms. Pruteau, please call the roll.
Kasuga.
Aye.
Fu.
Aye.
Harb Sheets.
Aye.
Nystrom.
Aye.
Rogers.
Aye.
Tate.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion passes. Mr. Fu, 10B to you.
All right. So item 10B, which is let's see. I have the separate document, but I want to make sure. Page 72 of 686 in the combined packet. So in 2003, the board conducted a barriers to telehealth survey. Surveys were sent to licensees who provided telehealth services and consumers. The result of the survey, the committee has been asked to review telehealth requirements, including HIPAA, Business and Professions Code relevant sections, and the California Code of Regulations section 1396.8, to make sure that licensees who are providing telehealth services are in compliance. At the July 2024 Enforcement Committee meeting, the committee discussed the results of the survey and began their review of the relevant Business and Professions Code and the California Code section. We will continue the review of the regulatory and statutory language at our next Enforcement Committee meeting, and we'll report back to the full board in November. So there's no items at this point other than to say that we're working on it, and we'll come back to you in a couple months. Is there any board discussion on this item?
No.
Any public comment? All right, so the last item, item 10C, this is page 73 of 686 in our combined packets. So last December, the board came together for a strategic planning session. And during that meeting, the board, staff, and stakeholders discussed goals for the Enforcement Committee. Those goals and objectives are listed in the attached strategic plan under item goal 4. The committee reviewed these goals at our July meeting and discussed how we would achieve those goals. During our strategic planning meeting in 23, there was also a discussion on how we could improve communication to licensees involved in the enforcement process. We've also heard public comment at our last in-person meeting with regard to the desire to improve communication to licensees as well. So during with those comments, those public comments made at the last meeting, as well as the comments made later last year, we discussed objective 4.11 about adding language to our subject contact letter, notifying the subject that they could hire an attorney if they chose to. Staff in the committee reviewed the letter and made a few edits and added language letting the subject know they could hire an attorney during the board's complaint process. So we have attached both the strategic plan that I referenced, but more importantly, or equally important, I should say, the subject contact letter, which is on page 95 of 686. And changes made to this letter are in underlined language. And with regard to the recommendation we heard from public comment, I believe from the person from San Diego, the line we have added or recommended adding is you are not required to hire legal counsel. However, that option is always available to you. This is page 95 of 686, and that underlined sentence I reference is in the paragraph immediately following 1, 2, 3, 4 allegations, etc. Yeah. I'm sorry, Dr. Harb Sheets. It is, I think this is the recommended addition, is anything in underline.
I see. Okay.
So when it's underlined, it's not currently in the letter. The committee is proposing to add that to the letter.
Okay. Are you asking for a motion?
I think we're asking for discussion at this point.
Okay.
If there are any additional changes to the letter, one of the crux of it is, I think, that we heard feedback that the letter can be confusing. The public comments that were made were that this letter sometimes can produce anxiety, uncertainty, and a lot of other emotions when in receipt of this letter. And that during these heightened state of emotions, there might be a search for what to do next and what's the appropriate next steps. And I think we're balancing the fact that we are, at the end of the day, an objective body that is providing information, that is collecting information, with the need to also soothe some of those heightened state of emotions. And so the language here, so we did strike out a couple things in the second paragraph, for example, to clarify what this process actually is. And then we added that sentence about 2/3 of down, saying that you're not required to hire legal counsel, but that option is always available to you. And I should just draw people's attention to the second page of this letter. We did add an entire paragraph as well, that we understand that this process can be stressful and that the board conducts this review in a fair and deliberative manner, et cetera. And we did add the word patience and, because as we saw in our annual report to the legislature, sometimes things can take 1,136 days.
I'm happy to make the motion to accept the changes provided by the Enforcement Committee.
I'll second it. Oh, sorry.
It's like a photo finish. Did Noah Lyles win the gold medal? Yes, he did. All right, we have a motion by Dr. Tate, and I'll say a second by Dr. Harbsheets. And I'll turn over for any public comment that people may have on this item. So if you have a desire to make a comment on this particular item, please do step up to the microphone. All right, oh, yes, Ms. Sorek.
I just want to add a little bit of context to this, and I just want to say how much I appreciate that this board is always so deliberate in how we review the way we communicate to our consumers and our licensees. Being on either side of this process, whether you are a consumer or you are a licensee, is understandably stressful. So we want to make sure that we're, as a government agency, collecting all the information that we need in order to proceed. But at the same time, we also want to be understandable in the way we communicate how people might be feeling on the other end and not sound robotic in our communication. So I just want to say how much I appreciate that this board has always been open to looking at some of the template letters that we provide to applicants, to consumers, to licensees, and look at the tone and the way we communicate to all of these individuals. So I think this is the important work you guys continually do and makes a big difference.
Thank you, Ms. Sorek. A reminder that it's not sometimes what we say, but how we say it matters. Really appreciate that. Madam President, okay, we call the roll?
Absolutely. Ms. Ruteau?
Kasuga?
Aye.
Fu?
Aye.
Harbsheets?
Aye.
Nystrom?
Aye.
Rogers?
Aye.
Tate?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion passes, and we will take this moment to take a
Dr.
break.
Tate,
Oh,
can we make one more remark on behalf of the Enforcement Committee
you may.
before we take that break?
Yes.
So the one thing that I did want to highlight is that all actions of the Enforcement Committee that we recommend to the board is done in a public manner at the board level. So once after the Enforcement Committee meets, we bring these recommendations to the full board so that the full board and all of our public members can participate in the development of this policy. So today's a great example where we had some wonderful help from one of our audience members here in making sure that list, so thank you for that. I think that's something I want to stress is that while the committee may meet in private because of the sensitivities around our enforcement analysts whose safety is paramount. All the decisions that the committee recommends are made in public to the board and for the board's full consideration with the ability for all stakeholders to weigh in and shape that decision making.
Thank you for that reminder. So let's take a break until 2:45. Thank you. I'm sorry.
It's open.
I got started and just kept going.
Good to go.
Thank you. Ms. Berteau, can you please call the roll?
Kasuga.
Here.
Fu.
Here.
Harb Sheets.
Here.
Nystrom.
Here.
Rogers.
Here.
Tate.
Here.
Roll is complete.
Thank you. Quorum is established, and we will take up agenda item number 11, Legislative and Regulatory Affairs Committee report and consideration of committee recommendations. Dr. Cervantes is not here today, but my esteemed colleague, Dr. Kasuga, will present this item.
Okay, and I have with me Mr. Polk to help guide different items. We'll start with item 11A, legislative proposals. We'll start with SB 1526. And this is on page 98 of the continuous, the big packet, page 1 on the legislative and regulatory affairs specific packet.
Thank you, Dr. Kasuga. Senate Bill 1526 is related to the proposal that was submitted to the Senate Committee on Business Professions and Economic Development for technical non-substantive changes to be included in the committee's omnibus bill for this legislative session. The proposal included amendments to Business Professions Code 2913, 2987, and at the time, Health and Safety Code 124260. The full proposal that was submitted and with the amended language for Business Professions Code 2913 is included in the meeting materials. Currently, Senate Bill 1526 language includes the proposed amendments to Health and Safety Codes 1374.72, 124260, and 128454 as related to updating the registration categories to the correct titles, specifically removing registered psychologist and amending the title to psychological associate from assistant. Senate Bill 1526 passed the Senate and Assembly committees and has now been referred to the full Assembly. Board staff has submitted a letter in support to all Assembly members. Throughout the legislative process and session, board staff has reached out to the committee consultants regarding the additional amendments, as it appears that the proposed changes to Business Professions Code 2913 and 2987 may have been substantive to be included in the committee's omnibus bill. And so for that reason, the board will look towards the board's sunset review to have the amendments to those business professions codes to be included in the sunset review. So that includes my report on Senate Bill 1526, and I'm open to any questions.
And any questions from the board? And this is information for informational purposes only. So we'll move on to
Public comment.
Oh, public comment. Any public comment on agenda item 11A1? Hearing none, we'll move on to agenda item 11B1. These are reviews of bills for active position recommendations to the board. So we'll start with SB 1451, Ashby, Professions and Vocations. And it's page 230 of the, oh wait, no, 189, my bad. Page 189 of the continuous packet. Thank you.
Dr. Kasuga, before I begin my report, so there is a action item on this one. Did you want to go ahead and discuss it today?
We were holding action items for tomorrow.
Okay.
And so informational only.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll jump ahead, sorry about that, and we'll talk about the agenda item 11C, bills with active positions taken by the board. These are all for information only. So we'll start with C1, AB 2051, Bonta Psychology Interjurisdictional Compact, and this starts on page 230.
So starting off with the item 11C1, Assembly Bill 2051. This bill was introduced by Assembly Member Bonta. This bill would have made California a compact state under the Psychology Interjurisdictional Compact, also known as PsyPact, to facilitate the practice of telepsychology and the temporary in-person, face-to-face practice of psychology across state lines. The board did adopt a opposed position on Assembly Bill 2051. Board staff has submitted letters in opposition as well as provided in-person testimony in opposition and met with the author's office and their staff as the bill made its way through the legislative process. There's been, during that process, there were amendments. One of the amendments included that the compact would have only been operative if the board did vote in favor of joining the compact. As well as an amendment to include that any person who is authorized by the compact to practice in California as an employer contractor of another state is prohibited unless they were licensed by the board. The bill was set for a hearing in the Senate Business Professions and Economic Development Committee. However, on July 3rd, Assembly Bill 2051 missed the deadline to be heard in the committee as the bill was pulled by the author, and AB 2051 is no longer going through the legislative process.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Moving on, we'll go to agenda item C2, AB 1991, Bonta, and this is on page 268.
Assembly Bill 1991, there is an active position on this bill. However, the bill has gone through substantive changes to where the board removed its opposition. So I can go in further discussion if you'd like, or if you like, since this is most likely going to be an action item, we can discuss tomorrow. It's up either way.
We can wait for tomorrow for all the active positions.
Okay.
We will go to C3, AB 2270, Mainshine, Healing Arts, Continuing Education, Menopausal Mental Health and Physical Health. That is on page 286.
Yes, Assembly Bill 2270 was introduced by Assemblymember Mainshine. Assembly Bill 2270 would require the board to consider including a course in menopausal mental or physical health for continuing professional development. The board adopted a support position on Assembly Bill 2270, and board staff has submitted letters in support to the Senate and Senate committees, or to the Assembly and the Senate committees. On June 18th, Assembly Bill 2270 passed the Appropriations Committee and was submitted for review on the Senate floor, and board staff has submitted a letter in support to all Senate members. At this time, staff is continuing to monitor the bill as it makes its way through the final stage of the legislative process, and I have any questions if you have any, or answers if you have any questions.
Any questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Okay, moving on to AB 2581, Continuing Education for Maternal Health. It's on page 309.
Assembly Bill 2581 is very similar to Assembly Bill 2270, which we just discussed. This bill is also introduced by Assemblymember Mainshine. This bill would require the board to consider including a course in maternal mental health for continuing professional development. The board adopted a support position on this bill as well, and staff has submitted letters to the Assembly and Senate committees in support of Assembly Bill 2581. On June 18th, 2581 passed the Appropriations Committees and was submitted to the review on the Senate floor, and board staff has submitted a letter in support to all Senate members as well. And staff is continuing to monitor the bill as it makes its way through the last stages.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the board? Any questions from the public? We'll move on to C1, 5, AB 2703, Aguiar Curry. This is on page 331.
Assembly Bill 2703 was introduced by Assemblymember Aguilar Curry. This bill would amend current law to allow psychological associates to perform services in federally qualified health centers and rural health centers and allow the centers to be reimbursed for the services. The board adopted a support position on Assembly Bill 2703. Board staff has submitted support letters to the Assembly and Senate committees, as well as the author's office. Currently, Assembly Bill 2703 is in the Senate Appropriations Committee, and staff is continuing to monitor the bill as the bill continues in the legislative process.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Okay.
Elizabeth Winkleman, again from California Psychological Association. I wanted to thank the board for the support of AB 2703. This was a CPA-sponsored bill that will improve access to care in FQHCs and RHCs, and also improve training opportunities in primary care and community health care for psychology trainees. And I got a text from our government relations director that it has passed out of the Appropriations Committee and will be going to the Senate floor, which is great. And I just also wanted to mention, in case there are actually any Wright Institute people here, that the idea originated from two professors at the Wright Institute, Drs. Timray Uzunchan and Mike Changaris, and they brought it to our Division 1 and to our CPA board. And so I know that if it passes, we'll have our fingers crossed that it is even specifically going to help this institute that has allowed us all to meet here to provide training opportunities for their students. So thank you.
This is a great update. Thank you so much, Dr. Winkleman. Any other comments from the public? Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item C6, SB 1012 by Wiener.
Senate Bill 1012 was introduced by Senator Wiener. This bill would have enacted the Regulated Psychedelic Assisted Therapy Act, which would establish the Board of Regulated Psychedelic Facilitators in the department under the Department of Consumer Affairs to license and regulate psychedelic assisted therapy facilitators. This bill would have required the board to be appointed by April 1st of 2025. The board adopted a opposed position on Senate Bill 1012 as concerns regarding the language and how the board licensees and the professions would apply to the new registration category, and specifically to the practice of psychedelic assisted therapy. Board staff did submit a letter in opposition to the members of the Appropriations Committee. However, soon after that, on May 16th, Senate Bill 1012 was held in the Appropriations Committee and failed to pass the committee, and in turn, Senate Bill 1012 did not continue in the legislative process.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Seeing none, that concludes agenda item 11C. We're going to proceed to agenda item 11D, although we're going to hold items D1, AB 236, Holden Healthcare Coverage Provider Directories. Item D4, SB 294, Wiener Healthcare Coverage Independent Medical Review. And D5, SB 999, Wiener Health Coverage Mental Health and Substance Use Disorder for tomorrow, since we might have to discuss it for a possible position. But any items that the board wants to discuss under this set of watch bills, please let us know. Hearing none from the board, how about from the public? Any of the watch bills that, aside from 1, 4, and 5, that you may want to discuss?
Hi, Dr. Andrea Davis again from the DIR Floor Time Coalition of California. And I just want to say thank you to this committee for adding 4 bills to the watch list based on my public comment at the last in-person meeting. SB 1120 has not been excluded, so I do want to say that this is an important bill for patient access to care and proper review of coverage for patients, that the person doing the review is trained and qualified in that field of medicine. It just makes logical sense that we would have mental health, or particularly psychologists, reviewing claims and authorizations that pertain to their field of training. So I hope that we can continue to watch these four bills that I brought up: AB 236, SB 294, SB 999, and SB 1120. Thank you very much for paying attention to those.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Hearing none, we're going to move on to, that concludes agenda item 11 for today, and then tomorrow we'll tackle the other items that we skipped from today. And then we'll move on to agenda item number 12, which is legislative items for a future meeting. The committee may, is this yours?
No, go, keep going. You're doing
The
great.
committee may discuss other items of legislation in sufficient detail to determine whether such items should be on a future committee or board meeting agenda, and or whether to hold a special meeting of the committee or board to discuss such items pursuant to Government Code Section 11125.4. So if there's any legislative items for future meetings that the board wants to add, or the public, please let us know. Hearing none from the board, how about from the public? Hearing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 13. We're really flying by here. Regulatory update, review, and consideration of additional changes. Go on, Mr. Polk.
Thank you. Included in the meeting materials is an update on the current regulatory package the board is currently working on. There were recent changes to item A, the inactive psychological associate registration. So I will present the updated revised language tomorrow, as well as for item G, the research psychoanalysts. There was some updated language that will need to be reviewed, so that will be presented tomorrow. The remaining packages in the meeting materials is, like I said, it's just an update on the active packages and where they are. Most of them are in the productive stage, so staff is working with the regulatory council in getting the language as well as the regulatory package ready to be submitted for the first round of review.
All right. Any comments from the board?
I just want to clarify, so 13A and 13G are the active items for tomorrow.
That's correct.
Thank you. Yes.
All right. Any other questions from or comments from the public on item 13? Hearing none, that concludes my part for today.
Thank you, Dr. Kasuga. We're going to jump to agenda item 18. This is on tomorrow's agenda, and Dr. Harpsheet is going to review some information, starting with the licensing report, 18A.
Ms. Chung?
Good afternoon, board members. Thank you, Dr. Harpsheets. Licensing report. I'd like to share that, and we're very excited to share this news, that we have filled the licensing analyst vacancy with Kenny Trang. Mr. Trang joined the licensing unit as an office technician since October 26, 2022, and started his new role as a licensing analyst on July 1st this year. And we're working to backfill the office technician position, and we're currently interviewing candidates for the vacancy, and hopefully we'll be able to fill that vacancy very soon. Regarding licensing populations, as of July 29, 2024, we have 23,251 licensed psychologists, 1,784 registered psychological associates, and 49 registered psychological testing technicians. It includes 20,618 current psychologists and 2,140 psychologists who are in the inactive status. There's one psychologist who is actively serving the military and permitted to provide psychological practice in a military setting, and 2 others who are also actively serving the military but not permitted to provide psychological practice. And we also have 490 licensed psychologists who are in the retired status. And you may find more details in Attachment A, the licensing population report. This report provides a snapshot of the number of psychologists and psychological associates in each status at the time the report was generated. And by comparing to the last report made at the May board meeting, the number of psychologists who hold a current license increased by 69, and we have 43 less current psychological associates, but 93 more psychologists in the retired status and 25 more psychological testing technicians. In Attachment B, you will find the workload reports for psychologist license, psychological associate registration, and psychological testing technician registration applications from January 2024 through June. And similar trend is observed when comparing to the last report made at the May board meeting. The lesser volume in March and April allows us to work on and approve more complete psychological associate applications in May. In Attachment C, the numbers of applications and notifications received are provided for a 12-month period from July 2023 through June 2024. The total number of all applications and notifications has decreased by about 142, but the trend is comparable to the same 12-month period as reported in the 22-23 year. And we're expecting an uptick in the application volume in the next couple of months. About average application processing timeframes, the board reviews and processes applications based on a first-come, first-served basis, and this includes but not limited to all applications, supporting materials, and responses to application deficiency. These are all reviewed according to the date that they are received for a fair process. A 6-month overview of the average processing timeframes in business days is provided in Attachment E. For psychologist application, we maintain the average processing time frame since we reported out at the last board meeting. We continue to maintain an average of 10 to 12 business days in reviewing applications or requested documents for psychologist applications. For psychological associate registration, we see the time frames thus increase by about 7 to 10 business days since our report at the May board meeting. And we also experience an increased processing timelines for processing deficient applications. With the uptick in the volume and staff shortages, we are relocating existing resources to help shorten the time frames. Regarding psychological testing technicians, so we finally have a full 6-month data for us to see the bar charts of the processing timelines for that application category since we launched this category in January this year. And it shows that currently it takes about 8 to 12 days for all the processes for this application type. As the licensing unit is not yet fully staffed, we continue to work with the Office of Human Resources and hope to fill the vacancies currently in the unit as soon as possible. And staff anticipated an increase in processing timelines of an additional 2 to 3 weeks beginning in May 2024. This was also remarked at the last board meeting as well, because we are seeing based on previous trends of incoming application in the same month, so we're anticipating an uptick soon in the next few months as well. When we reported out that increase, our timelines are shorter than expected, what we have expected, because previously we said it will be 2 to 3 weeks out, so we're not as that long right now. But staff continues to recommend to individuals, if they're interested to apply to the board for registration or eligibility to take an examination, please do review for completeness of an application prior to submission, so that would avoid any unnecessary processing delays. And this concludes my report, and I'm available any questions if you may have any. Thank you.
Any board questions?
I just say thank you for your report, and I'm so excited you've hired someone else to support that department.
Mr. Fu?
Ms. Chung, could you remind us, if you're seeking licensure and making a new application, either as an out-of-state applicant or as a new applicant, is there a way to find out, like if I was to apply today, what the expected wait time is?
Yes, thank you for the question. So on the board's website, we do post the processing timelines. We post like the oldest day that it could be possible for processing based on their receive date, because we report out would be average processing timeline among all the analysts. So there could be some a little faster. Some could be slower based on the volume and complexity. What is in queue? So absolutely, yeah. And we post that timelines approximately every 2 weeks on our board website for reference. So we made an improvement on that, because previously we were only reporting out on a monthly basis, and we see that the importance of keeping applicants up to date where we are, so we increased then that updated time frame from a month to 2 weeks.
That's really helpful. And so not everything can be planned, but for those who are in a position to plan, if they know they might be looking for licensure in a month from now, they could check today to go, oh, it's probably going to take 4 weeks, so I should plan and make any changes to my life or to others based on what we know today. Is that correct?
Yeah, that would be a good indication, but I do want to note that the timeframes do fluctuate based on what is in the queue and what we have received. It could be the volume, it could be the quality of applications, but that would be like a good ballpark estimation as an indicator if they want to make changes.
And to your question, to what you said earlier about supporting documents and a comprehensive application, I know I work really well with a checklist. And so I'm curious, is there a checklist for applicants so that they can ensure the quality of their application and documents is meeting the requirements that you're asking for?
Yes, we do have. We did create a application checklist for our applicants, and I think mostly for psychologist application, because that was our first step to attempt to make a checklist for our applicants. So that checklist were reviewed also by the board, and it was posted. It is posted on our board's website for reference as well.
All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Chung.
No problem. Thank you.
And you mentioned, excuse me, Ms. Chung, that you were reallocating resources within your department to try to handle this backlog?
Yes. So we're trying to see how we can shift the queue, or like to see if there are any other analysts available currently working to be able to take on more or to assist each other, because it's a teamwork for processing applications, so it's not like everyone in their silo. So that's what I meant when I said that relocating resources.
Yeah, I think that's important. It's always good to hear that you're aware of those changes and responding, and thank you. Any public comment on the licensing report? Okay. Let us move on to the continuing professional development and Renewals report. Ms. Proto?
Does everyone mind if I just stay where I'm at? We're all good? Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone. In the attachments, we show that between January 2024 and July 2024, 75% of psychologists renewed as active. The retirements account for approximately 3% of the monthly applications processed. Psychological associates account for 15% of the monthly applications, and approximately 92% of psychologists and psychological associates renewed their license online using Breeze per month. These are listed in the attachments. CE/CPD audits were sent out for June 2023 through January 2024, and the pass rate stands at 66%. However, it is worth noting that 18% of audits are pending completion. This doesn't mean that people have not submitted documentation. We've had some complicated issues with staffing, so there have been audits put on hold. And this was originally put on hold due to the CPD coordinator vacancy. Audits and related tasks are being evaluated now because of the current staffing issues, and there will be an update provided on when audits will begin again as soon as possible. At the Licensure Committee, which was held on July 19th, 2024, Chairperson Harb Sheets requested an update, which included a longer period to examine pass rates for audits. The pass rate from 2017 through 2021 was consistently over 80%. The pass rate for second audits has been over 80% since 2017, with a 100% pass rate in 2021 and 2022. The period of January 2022 to January 2024 included different models of continuing education, which included the implementation of the new CPD model from the previous continuing education model, which had been in place for quite some time. The pass rate for January 2022 through June 2022 CE audits was 73%, with 26% of psychologists failing the CE audit. The main reason cited for failing the audit was mostly related to concerns around the COVID-19 pandemic, such as office closures and inability to access or reproduce certificates, or an assumption that the live interactive requirement was waived. Audits were on hold for the period of July 2022 through July 2023 due to staffing and the development, rollout, and implementation of the CPD model. This concludes my report, and I am available to answer questions.
Any board questions? Seeing none. Any public comment or questions? I see none.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Proto. Okay. Back to Ms. Chung for the examination report.
Thank you, Dr. Harb Sheets. So please find the examination statistics from January to June 2024 provided on the memo. For the EPPP, the overall pass rate in 2024 so far is about 38%, and the overall pass rate amount candidates who take the exam for the first time is about 61%. By comparing the pass rates to previous 4 years, we can see that the pass rates in January, March, and June 2024 are lower than previous years, but the pass rates in February, April, and May are closer to the average of the previous 4 years. About the CPLE, the overall pass rate for the first half year in 2024 is about 82%, and the overall pass rate for the first timers is almost 81%. And the CPLE pass rate is trending mostly consistent when comparing to previous years. And this item is for informational only. If you may have any questions, I'm available to answer.
I guess I hear so much being said about the pass rates on the EPPP. I just wanted to clarify that it's important to look at first-time pass rates versus overall pass rates, which is a smaller number, and also that the EPPP is a national exam, and that our board does not actually, we are not involved in the development of that exam. And I think that needs to be clarified just for people to remember that ASPPB would be who to talk with about anybody's concerns about that. So, any board questions on the examination report? Any public questions or comments? Thank you, Ms. Chung. Oh, Mr. Fu.
I had a belated thought,
Oh,
Dr.
okay.
Harpsheets, which is, I think would be helpful to also remind folks of the presentation we received in Sacramento, I believe, from a state office that is not the Office of the State Statistician,
Right,
because
right.
that's the logical name, but that's not what it's called, I'm assuming.
Right, but he gave us statistics.
But
Yeah.
he broke down, I think, a lot of information about who's passing by institution, I think by how many times they've taken the exam, et cetera.
Right.
And so the materials from that presentation are online at our board website, I believe. And of course, the full video of that presentation is also available.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, because I think that he did give us quite a bit of information by institution, and the helpful thing too was that people eventually pass, and there are people who take it 4, 5, sometimes 6 times, but people eventually pass.
And it's also good to know we will be discussing this further tomorrow as agenda item number, 17?
When we look at EPPP2?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And I just wanted to add that it's also going to be in the newsletter and probably discuss in future newsletters as a series on EPPP and pass rates, the statistics, and further discussion of what it means for California.
Thank you. Okay, did we want to talk about barriers to telehealth survey?
Did you open
or
that up for public comment?
Yes.
Oh, then no,
There were
you're
no
great.
public comment.
Yep, no,
Okay,
those
so we're
are-
going to stop at this point.
We're stopping. We're going to leave the action items for tomorrow.
Okay.
We are going to jump to agenda item number 14. The board will meet in closed session to discuss disciplinary matters, including petitions for reinstatement, modification, early termination, proposed decisions, stipulations, petitions for reinstatement, and modification of penalty and remands. Before we leave today, I just want to let everyone know when we leave closed session today, we will be adjourning for the day. And Ms. Pertot, can you please let us know what CPD credit everyone has earned today? Okay. Turn on your thing. Okay. Caught me off guard too. I said 4:30, but hey, I love it.
All right, thank you. Thanks for attending today's board meeting. You will receive 4.5 hours, so 4.5 hours for your participation under CPD category number 1, attendance at a Board of Psychology meeting. For your records, please note today's date as August 15th, 2024, the name of today's meeting, which is board meeting, and 4.5 hours. You will only receive credit for the open session portion of the meeting. So be sure to sign out when you leave today and we go to closed session. Just as a reminder again, we have a courtesy form that's provided that's available to you to aid in tracking CPD should you wish to use it, and that's accessible on the board website under CPD resources. Thank you, and back to you, Dr. Tate.
Perfect. We start tomorrow morning at 9:30. Thank you for participating. Hope to see everyone tomorrow. Thank you. Ooh.